day my sister called me ugly in front of my entire school. I wished I could disappear. It was my sophomore year of high school. The cafeteria was packed. Students were laughing, talking, and waiting in line for lunch. I was carrying my tray when my older sister, Chloe, walked over with her friends. She looked me up and down before smirking. "Ladies," she said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "this is my little sister." One of her friends smiled politely. "We've never met." Chloe laughed. "You're lucky." Then she turned toward me. "You know, if I looked like you, I'd never leave the house." The table exploded with laughter. Someone whispered, "That's brutal." Another student pulled out a phone. I stood there frozen, my cheeks burned. I wanted to say something, anything, but no words came out. I quietly placed my lunch tray on the nearest table and walked into the restroom. The moment the door closed behind me, I broke down crying. My name is Emily Parker, and for years, I believed every cruel word my sister ever said about me. Growing up, Chloe was the star of the family. She had perfect blonde hair, perfect skin, perfect grades. She was captain of the cheerleading team and had thousands of followers online before social media. Influencers were even a career. People admired her everywhere she went. Then there was me, dark brown curly hair that refused to stay straight, freckles covering my nose, glasses, braces, and enough insecurity to fill an ocean. Whenever relatives visited, they always compared us. "Chloe is absolutely gorgeous." Then they'd turn toward me. "You have such a sweet personality." I hated hearing those words, because even at 14, I knew what they really meant. The comparisons didn't stop at school. They followed me home. One evening, Mom called us downstairs for family photos. The photographer spent almost 20 minutes adjusting Chloe's pose. Perfect, beautiful, one more smile. When it was finally my turn, he snapped 3 quick pictures. "Good enough." I looked at the camera screen. "Can we take another one?" Before the photographer could answer, Chloe rolled her eyes. "Why? So you can still hate the way you look afterward?" Dad laughed quietly. Mom didn't say anything. That silence hurt more than Chloe's words. By 16, I had completely stopped believing in mirrors. Every morning, I'd get dressed without really looking at myself. I wore oversized hoodies because they made me feel invisible. If people couldn't see me, maybe they couldn't judge me. One afternoon, my art teacher, Mrs. Bennett, stopped me after class. "Emily." I turned around. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you always hide behind those baggy clothes?" I looked down. "They're comfortable." She smiled gently. "No, they're safe." I didn't answer, because she was right. She walked over to one of my sketches. I loved drawing fashion designs, elegant dresses, runway outfits, creative clothing that made people feel confident. Mrs. Bennett picked up my sketchbook. "Did you design these?" I nodded. "They're incredible." I laughed awkwardly. "They're just drawings." She looked directly into my eyes. "Every designer starts with a sketch." That sentence stayed with me. A few weeks later, our school announced a statewide fashion design competition. The winner would receive a scholarship to one of the best design academies in New York. Mrs. Bennett immediately handed me an application. "You should enter." I shook my head. "People like me don't belong in fashion." She frowned. "Who told you that?" I didn't have to answer. She already knew. That evening, I filled out the application anyway. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents. For the next 2 months, I worked in secret. Every night after homework, I sat at my tiny desk drawing designs until 2 in the morning. I watched free fashion tutorials online, learned sewing from old library books, bought cheap fabric from clearance bins. I even turned Dad's old garage into a tiny workshop. The room wasn't glamorous. There was barely enough space to move around, but every stitch gave me hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, I was more than the girl my sister laughed at. Competition day arrived faster than I expected. Young designers from all over Illinois filled the exhibition hall. Professional judges walked from booth to booth. I could barely breathe. Then I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Emily?" I turned around. My heart dropped. "Chloe?" She stared at the mannequin wearing my handmade dress. Then she laughed. "You actually think this belongs in a fashion competition?" Several contestants looked over. She folded her arms. You're embarrassing yourself. I felt every ounce of confidence disappear. Maybe she was right. Maybe I didn't belong there. Just as I reached for my dress, preparing to pack everything up, one of the judges walked over. She looked at my design for nearly a minute without saying a word. Finally, she smiled. Who created this? My hand slowly went up. I did. She extended her hand. My name is Victoria Monroe. I've been judging fashion competitions for 25 years. She looked back at the dress. And this, she smiled warmly, is the most original design I've seen. Today, I glanced at Chloe. For the first time in my life, she wasn't laughing, she was speechless. But neither of us knew that this single dress was about to change my life forever. The entire exhibition hall fell silent. Judge Victoria Monroe continued examining every stitch of my dress. She gently ran her fingers across the fabric before turning back to me. Who taught you how to design like this? I swallowed nervously. No one. I learned from library books and online videos. Her eyebrows lifted in surprise. You've never attended fashion school? I shook my head. No, she smiled. That makes this even more impressive. Meanwhile, Chloe stood only a few feet away. The same sister who had laughed at me just moments earlier now looked completely confused. One of her friends whispered, I thought you said Emily couldn't even dress herself. Chloe forced a smile. I guess she got lucky. Victoria heard every word. She looked directly at Chloe. Talent isn't luck, it's discipline. Chloe looked away without saying another word. Later that afternoon, the winners were announced. Third place, then second. My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped my contestant badge. And first place, the announcer paused. Emily Parker. For a second, I thought I had imagined it. Then the audience erupted into applause. I slowly walked onto the stage. Victoria handed me a crystal trophy and an envelope. Congratulations, you've earned a full scholarship to the Monroe Institute of Fashion in New York. Tears filled my eyes. A scholarship. Everything I had dreamed about. As cameras flashed around me, I glanced into the crowd. My parents had arrived just in time for the announcement. Mom looked shocked. Dad was clapping proudly. Chloe simply stood there. For once, she had nothing to say. That evening, our house felt strangely quiet. Mom placed the trophy on the dining table. I had no idea you could do this. I smiled politely. You never asked. The room became silent. Dad cleared his throat. We're proud of you. Those words should have made me happy. Instead, they made me wonder why it had taken a trophy for them to notice me. Chloe suddenly stood up. Can we stop acting like she's the next Coco Chanel? Mom frowned. Chloe, what? It was one competition. People are acting like she's some kind of genius. I looked at her calmly. You don't have to be happy for me, but you don't have to ruin this either. She rolled her eyes and walked upstairs. The door slammed. Dad sighed. She's just jealous. It was the first time anyone in my family had ever admitted it. 3 months later, I packed my bags for New York. The city felt like another world. Towering buildings, busy streets, students from every corner of the country. For the first time, nobody knew me as Chloe's little sister. I was simply Emily. Fashion school wasn't easy. Some students had grown up around famous designers, others had parents who owned luxury brands. I had a scholarship and a second-hand sewing machine. There were nights I slept only 3 hours, days when I skipped lunch to save money. But unlike high school, and no one laughed when I shared my ideas. They listened. During my second year, one of my professors announced a collaboration with a rising luxury fashion label. Each student would design one original collection. Only one designer would be chosen. The winning collection would debut during New York Fashion Week. Everyone wanted that opportunity. For 6 weeks, I lived inside the design studio. Coffee replaced sleep. Sketches covered every wall. I wanted my collection to tell a story, not about beauty, about confidence. Every outfit represented a different version of the girl I used to be. the invisible girl, the insecure girl, the girl learning to believe in herself. Presentation day arrived. Professional designers filled the auditorium. Fashion journalists lined the front rows. Models stepped onto the runway wearing student collections. One by one, when my turn came, I closed my eyes. Then, the music started. The first model walked out, a long cream-colored coat with bold gold accents. Then another, each design received louder applause than the last. When the final model reached the end of the runway, the audience stood, a standing ovation. I couldn't believe it. The judges announced the winner only minutes later, Emily Parker. Again, the applause echoed throughout the building. Professor Lawson hugged me tightly. I knew you were special. That night, photos from the runway spread across social media. Fashion bloggers shared my collection. Magazines posted interviews. By morning, one video had reached over 5 million views, then 6 million, then 10. My inbox exploded with emails from clothing brands, modeling agencies, fashion magazines, celebrity stylists. The girl who once hid behind oversized hoodies had suddenly become one of the most talked about young designers in America. Then my phone vibrated. It was a message from Chloe. After almost a year of silence, congratulations. I'm proud of you. I stared at the screen. For years, I had dreamed of reading those words, but somehow, they didn't feel the way I thought they would, because the little girl who once needed her sister's approval no longer existed, and I had no idea that Chloe's next visit would reveal the real reason she had suddenly decided to come back into my life. 3 days after my collection went viral, my assistant walked into my design studio. Emily, she said, holding a tablet, there's someone asking to see you. Who is it? She hesitated. Your sister. For a moment, I simply stared at her. After everything that had happened, after years of insults, Chloe was here. I took a deep breath. Send her in. A few seconds later, she stepped into my office. She looked exactly as I remembered. Perfect hair, designer handbag, confident posture, but something about her eyes had changed. They no longer carried the certainty they once did. Instead, they looked tired, almost frightened. Neither of us spoke. Finally, she smiled awkwardly. Wow, this place is incredible. I nodded politely. Thank you. She looked around the studio, where dozens of designers were working on new collections. I never imagined you'd build something like this. I looked directly at her. You also never imagined I'd succeed. She lowered her eyes. No, I didn't. We sat across from each other in my office. For several moments, silence filled the room. Then Chloe finally spoke. I owe you an apology. I didn't respond. I spent years making fun of you. I compared you to myself. I made you feel small because. She paused. Because I was terrified of becoming ordinary. That wasn't the answer I expected. She laughed bitterly. You know what happens when you're the pretty sister your whole life? I stayed quiet. You start believing your appearance is the only thing that gives you value. She looked at her hands. When people stopped paying attention to me, I realized I had no idea who I actually was. For the first time, I didn't see the girl who bullied me. I saw someone who had built her identity on compliments, and now, those compliments had disappeared. She reached into her purse and handed me an old photograph. It was the two of us as little girls. I was about 6, she was 10. We were both wearing matching dresses Mom had made. We used to be best friends, she whispered. I smiled sadly. I remember. You followed me everywhere. I thought you were the coolest person in the world. Tears filled her eyes. I ruined that. I nodded. You did. She didn't argue, because she couldn't. Then she took a deep breath. I need your help. There it was. The sentence I had been expecting. My influencer contracts ended. My followers disappeared. The brands stopped calling. I've been trying to start over. She looked around the studio. I was wondering if there might be a place for me here. I leaned back in my chair. Years ago, I would have done anything just to hear my sister say she needed me. Now, the decision was mine. I stood and walked toward the large windows overlooking Manhattan. I remembered every cruel comment, every laugh, every tear I cried alone. Then I remembered Mrs. Bennett, Victoria, my professors, the people who had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Those people had changed my life, not because they pitied me, because they gave me an opportunity. I turned back toward Chloe. I'm not going to give you a job because we're sisters. She nodded slowly. I understand, but if you're willing to work hard, you can interview like everyone else. Her eyes widened. Really? I smiled. Your last name won't help you, but it won't hurt you either. For the first time in years, she smiled without arrogance. Thank you. 6 months later, Chloe was still working at the company, not as a model, not as an executive. She started as a junior social media assistant. She arrived early, stayed late, accepted criticism. Slowly, she earned everyone's respect, including mine. One afternoon, she walked into my office holding a garment bag. I made something. I looked surprised. You designed this? She nodded nervously. I've been taking evening classes. She unzipped the bag. Inside was a beautiful jacket. It wasn't perfect, but it was creative, original, honest. I smiled. I love it. She laughed. You don't have to lie. I'm not. I love it because it's the first thing you've ever created for yourself, not for attention, not for approval, for passion. A year later, our company launched its biggest fashion show yet. Celebrities, journalists, designers from around the world filled the venue. As the final model walked down the runway, the audience stood and applauded. The host stepped onto the stage. Tonight's collection was designed by the sisters. The spotlight found us standing backstage. Chloe looked at me. I never thought we'd be here together. I smiled. Neither did I. She hugged me tightly. I'm sorry for everything. This time, I believed her. I forgive you. After the show, a young girl approached us. She looked about 15 years old. Curly hair, freckles, oversized hoodie. She reminded me of myself. She nervously held out a sketchbook. I want to become a fashion designer, but everyone says I'm not pretty enough. I smiled and opened her sketchbook. Her designs were incredible. I looked at her and said the words I had once needed to hear. Fashion isn't about being the prettiest person in the room. It's about helping people feel confident in who they already are. Tears filled her eyes. Really? I nodded. Beauty fades. Confidence grows. Kindness lasts forever. She smiled. The same hopeful smile I had once worn. As she walked away, Chloe quietly whispered, "You just changed her life." I looked out at the cheering crowd. No, someone changed mine first. Driving home that night, I thought about the girl crying alone in the school bathroom after being called ugly. If I could speak to her now, I'd tell her something simple. The people who judge your appearance only see your reflection. They never see your potential. Real beauty isn't found in perfect skin, perfect hair, or perfect photos. It's found in courage, in resilience, and in becoming the person you were always meant to be. And no matter who said you couldn't,